My hands trembled as I held the wedding invitation. Gold embossed letters spelled out my son Marcus's name next to a woman I'd never heard of, Jennifer Palmer. The ceremony was in 3 days. 3 days! I had raised this boy alone for 32 years, worked 3 jobs to put him through medical school, and I was finding out about his wedding the same way you'd notify someone about a garage sale. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is Dorothy Jean Washington, and I'm 58 years old. I've lived in Chicago my whole life, in the same South Side neighborhood where I was born. For 3 decades, I believed that sacrifice meant love, that giving everything meant you'd receive something back. I was wrong. The invitation came in the regular mail on a Thursday afternoon. Not hand-delivered, not announced with a phone call, just there, between a grocery store flyer and my electric bill. Mrs. Dorothy Washington and guest. And guest. As if I needed permission to bring someone to my own son's wedding, as if I was just another name on a list. I called him immediately. My fingers shook so hard I could barely dial the number. It rang 4 times before he answered, and I could hear restaurant noise in the background. Laughter, clinking glasses, the sound of a life I wasn't part of. "Marcus, baby, I just got your wedding invitation." There was a pause. A long, telling pause. "Oh, yeah. Mom, I meant to call you about that." Meant to call me? About his wedding. The wedding that was happening in 3 days. Who is Jennifer Palmer? My voice cracked, despite my attempt to sound calm. Mom, it's complicated. We've been together for 2 years. She's a corporate attorney. We met at a hospital fundraiser. 2 years. He'd been with someone for 2 years and never mentioned her? Not once. Not in our weekly phone calls that had become monthly, then sporadic, then almost non-existent. "Why didn't you tell me you were engaged?" Another pause. More background noise. A woman's voice saying something I couldn't make out. "Mom, Jennifer's family they're very traditional, very private. They wanted a small ceremony. Just immediate family." "I am immediate family, Marcus. I'm your mother." "I know, Mom, but Jennifer's parents are paying for everything, and they have certain expectations about how things should be done." "Jennifer's parents are paying for everything." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had paid for everything his entire life. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every book, every tuition payment. I hadn't bought myself new clothes in 5 years because I was saving for the condo he said he wanted to buy. "What kind of expectations?" I asked quietly. They're very establishment, Mom. Old Chicago money. Their circle it's different from what we're used to." "Different how?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. They were white, wealthy, connected, and I was black, working class, with rough hands and a South Side accent. I was the embarrassment he'd been trying to minimize for years. "Mom, it's not about you. It's just Jennifer and I are building a life in a certain world. Her father is a senior partner at one of the biggest law firms in the city. Her mother sits on boards of museums and charities. There are expectations. And I don't fit those expectations?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to, baby." I hung up before he could say anything else, before he could offer some hollow reassurance that would make everything worse. I sat in my kitchen, in the apartment where I raised him, looking at the invitation that made me feel like a stranger in my own son's life. The walls around me held 25 years of memories. I remembered the day we moved in when Marcus was 7 years old. It was right after his father, James, died from complications of diabetes. James had been a good man, a mechanic who worked hard but never quite got ahead. When he died, he left us with medical bills and funeral expenses that took me 3 years to pay off. This apartment had been our sanctuary. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a living room where we'd spent countless evenings, Marcus doing homework at the table while I worked beside him, ironing clothes or preparing meals for the next day. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I got up and walked to Marcus's old bedroom. I hadn't changed it much after he moved out. His basketball trophies still lined the shelf, his high school graduation picture hung on the wall, that brilliant smile showing all his pride at being valedictorian. The acceptance letter to Northwestern University was framed next to it. I remembered that day so clearly. Marcus had come running into the apartment, waving the letter, shouting with joy. We danced around this tiny room, both of us crying and laughing. Northwestern, a full scholarship for undergraduate, and I'd managed to save enough to help with medical school expenses that the scholarships didn't cover. "Mama," he'd said that day, hugging me tight, "I'm going to make you so proud. I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to take care of you. You'll never have to work like this again." I believed him. God help me, I'd believed every word. Medical school had been harder than we expected. The scholarship covered tuition, but there were books, supplies, fees, living expenses. Marcus needed to focus on his studies, not worry about money. So I added a third job, taking care of an elderly couple on weekends. Mrs. Kowalski and her husband, Henry, lived in Lincoln Park. They paid well, but getting there meant 2 buses each way. I'd leave my Southside apartment at 5 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday mornings, spend 12 hours caring for the Kowalskis, then ride the 2 buses home, arriving after dark. I was so tired those years that I barely remember them now. Just a blur of work, sleep, sending money to Marcus every month. He called me regularly during medical school, told me about his classes, his clinical rotations, his dreams of becoming a cardiac surgeon. He was so passionate, so dedicated. I lived for those phone calls, for hearing the excitement in his voice. "Mama, you should see this surgery I observed today. 8 hours, open heart, triple bypass. It was incredible. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm so proud of you, baby. I couldn't do it without you, Mama. You know that, right? Everything I achieve is because of you." Those words had kept me going through the exhaustion, through the aching feet and the sleepless nights. Everything I achieve is because of you. But somewhere during his residency, things started to change. The phone calls became less frequent. When we did talk, Marcus seemed distracted, distant. He started mentioning names I didn't know, colleagues and friends from the hospital. Dr. Palmer, Dr. Richardson, Dr. Chen. His world was expanding, and I wasn't part of the expansion. "How are you, Mama?" he'd ask, but I could tell he wasn't really listening to the answer. "I'm fine, baby. Working hard, saving up." "That's good, Mama. Hey, I have to go. We have rounds in 5 minutes. I'll call you next week." But next week would become 2 weeks, then 3. I told myself he was busy. Residency was demanding. He was building his career. I understood. I'd always understood. It was during his fellowship that I first noticed he was ashamed of me. He'd invited me to a hospital event, some kind of recognition dinner for the new fellows. I'd been so excited. I bought a new dress, my first in years, a navy blue one from Macy's that wasn't on clearance. I got my hair done at the salon instead of doing it myself. I took the bus and the L train to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, arriving exactly on time. The event was in a beautiful ballroom with chandeliers and white tablecloths. I'd never been anywhere so fancy. Marcus met me at the door. He looked handsome in his suit, professional and confident. But when he saw me, something flickered across his face, just for a second. Disappointment? Embarrassment? I couldn't quite name it, but I felt it. "Hi, Mama," he said, hugging me tight. You made it. Of course I made it, baby. I wouldn't miss this for the world. He guided me inside, but not to his table. Mama, I hope you don't mind, but I put you at a table near the back. My program director and some of the attending physicians are sitting at my table, and we'll probably be talking a lot of shop, medical stuff that might bore you. It was a lie, and we both knew it. But I smiled and said, That's fine, baby. You go do what you need to do. I spent that evening at a table with other people's parents who were also placed near the back. We made small talk, ate our rubber chicken, and watched from a distance as our children mingled with people they considered important. I watched Marcus laugh and talk with his colleagues. He seemed so at ease with them, so natural. When he glanced in my direction a few times, he'd wave, but he never came over. Not once, during the entire 3-hour event. On the L train home that night, still wearing my new dress, I cried. I told myself I was being silly, that I should be proud of how well Marcus fit into his new world. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. I was no longer someone he was proud of. I was someone he had to manage. The years of his fellowship passed in much the same way. Increasingly rare phone calls, promises to visit that never materialized, excuses about being busy. I kept working my 3 jobs, kept saving money, kept waiting for the day that Marcus would fulfill his promise to take care of me. Soon, Mama, he'd say when I mentioned retirement. Just a few more years and I'll be making attending physician's salary. Then everything will be different. I'd held on to those words like a lifeline. Just a few more years. But the years passed and nothing changed except the growing distance between us. Marcus finished his fellowship and got hired as an attending cardiac surgeon at Northwestern. He bought a condo in Streeterville, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Chicago. When I asked if I could visit, he said, Of course, Mama, but let me get settled first. I'll have you over for dinner soon. Soon never came. Now, sitting in my kitchen with his wedding invitation, I understood that soon would never come. I had been edited out of Marcus's narrative. I was the inconvenient backstory he preferred not to mention. The struggling single mother from the South Side didn't fit the image he was cultivating as a successful cardiac surgeon in Chicago's medical elite. I spent that Thursday evening going through old photo albums, pictures of Marcus as a baby, chubby-cheeked and smiling. Marcus on his first day of kindergarten, wearing this shirt I'd stayed up late the night before to iron perfectly. Marcus at his 8th grade graduation, me beside him in my nursing assistant uniform because I'd come straight from work and didn't have time to change. There were so many pictures of just the two of us, mother and son. We'd been a team, facing the world together. When had that team dissolved? I found a Mother's Day card from when Marcus was 12. He'd made it himself, construction paper decorated with markers and stickers. The front said, World's Best Mama, in his careful handwriting. Inside, he had written, Dear Mama, thank you for working so hard for me. When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house, and you can stop working and just relax. I love you more than anything. Your son, Marcus. I read that card 3 times, tears streaming down my face. That boy, that sweet boy who'd promised to buy me a house, was now getting married without really wanting me there. Friday morning, I called in sick to my day job at the hospital. I'd never done that before in 23 years. I just couldn't face it. Couldn't put on my scrubs and smile and take care of other people when my own heart was breaking. I tried to call Marcus again, but it went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What would I say? Please actually want me at your wedding? Please don't be ashamed of me. Please remember I'm your mother. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Washington? This is Jennifer Palmer, my future daughter-in-law, the woman I'd never met, never even spoken to. Hello, I managed. I wanted to call personally to welcome you to the wedding. Her voice was cultured, precise. Marcus has told me so much about you. That was a lie. Marcus had clearly told her very little about me if he'd spent 2 years with her without ever mentioning we existed. That's kind of you, I said. Wonderful. Also, Marcus mentioned you might not know many people there. Almost all the guests are from our side. Family friends of my parents, colleagues from the hospital. I just wanted you to know so you wouldn't feel uncomfortable. She was telling me, in the politest way possible, that I wouldn't fit in at my own son's wedding. The reception will be very brief, just a cocktail hour really. We're not doing a traditional dinner or dancing. My parents prefer more intimate gatherings. No dinner, no dancing. No celebration. Just a quick ceremony and an hour of awkward cocktails with people who wouldn't want to talk to me. Mrs. Washington, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. I hope you understand this is just the way my family does things. Marcus is joining our family, so we're following our traditions. Marcus is joining our family. Not we're joining families, not we're creating a new family. Marcus was being absorbed into the Palmer family, and I was being left behind. I understand perfectly. Thank you for calling, Jennifer. After I hung up, I sat very still for a long time. The afternoon sun streamed through my kitchen window, the same window I'd stood at thousands of times looking out at the neighborhood while making dinner for Marcus, planning his future, dreaming about his success. I had sacrificed everything for him: my youth, my health, my dreams. I'd worked myself to exhaustion for 30 years, and this was how he repaid me: by treating me like an embarrassing obligation he had to manage. The old Dorothy would have cried, would have blamed herself, would have wondered what she had done wrong. But something had shifted in me during that phone call with Jennifer Palmer. A door had closed somewhere deep in my heart. I got up and walked to my bedroom. I pulled out the lockbox I kept under my bed, the one with my important documents and my savings. I'd been putting money in there for years, saving for emergencies, saving to help Marcus, saving for the day he said he'd buy me that house. I counted it carefully. $18,427. Money I'd earned $1 at a time, one extra shift at a time, one weekend job at a time. I'd been planning to give this money to Marcus as a wedding gift to help with his new life with Jennifer. But sitting there on my bedroom floor, I made a different decision. This money was mine. I'd earned it, and I was going to use it for myself. For the first time in 30 years, I was going to put myself first. I spent Friday evening online, something I rarely did, but I'd taken a computer class at the community center last year, and I knew how to search for things now. I looked up the Chicago club where the wedding would be held. It was as exclusive as Jennifer had implied. Founded in 1869, it was one of the oldest and most prestigious private clubs in America. The building itself was a landmark, all marble and mahogany and old money. I looked at the dress code. Ladies were expected to wear floor-length gowns or elegant cocktail dresses with appropriate jewelry and accessories. No pants, no casual wear, and certainly nothing from Macy's clearance rack. Then I did something I'd never done before. I searched for divorce lawyers. Not because I was married, but because I was done. Done waiting for Marcus to remember I existed, done making excuses for his neglect, done pretending that his success was somehow my success when he clearly didn't want me anywhere near his achievements. But I wasn't looking for a lawyer to attack Marcus. I was looking for information about how to protect myself, about how to ensure that the sacrifices I'd made didn't mean I had to accept any treatment he chose to give me. I read that article 3 times, and with each reading, I felt stronger, clearer, more certain about what I needed to do. Saturday morning, I woke up with a plan. Not a revenge plan, not a plan to hurt Marcus, but a plan to save myself. I called Mrs. Kowalski, my weekend employer, and told her I was retiring. After 5 years of caring for her and her husband, I was done. She was surprised but understanding. "Dorothy, you've been wonderful to us, but you deserve to rest. You've earned it." Those words meant more than she could have known. Next, I called the hospital where I worked as a nursing assistant and submitted my resignation. 23 years of service, ending with a simple phone call. My supervisor, Patricia, was shocked. "Dorothy, what happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Patricia. Better than fine. I'm just ready for a new chapter." "But what will you do?" "I'm going to live." I spent Saturday making phone calls, rearranging my life. I called my landlord and gave 60 days notice. I was going to move. Not far, just to a smaller place that I could afford on Social Security alone. No more killing myself to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment I didn't need. I called my sister, Ruth, in Atlanta. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe a year. We'd grown apart over the years, both busy with our own struggles. "Dorothy, everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Ruth. I was thinking maybe I'd come visit you for a while, after I get settled in a new place." "Visit? For how long?" "I don't know. A month? 2 months? However long feels right." "Of course, sister. You're always welcome here. What's going on?" "I'm making some changes. Big changes." I told her about Marcus's wedding, about the invitation that arrived like junk mail, about Jennifer Palmer's phone call. Ruth listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That boy," she finally said, her voice tight with anger, "after everything you did for him." "I'm not angry anymore, Ruth. I'm just done." "Done with what?" "Done waiting for him to appreciate me. Done sacrificing myself for someone who doesn't even want me in his life. Done being small so he can feel big." "Oh, Dorothy, it's about time." Her words made me cry, but they were good tears. Healing tears. Sunday was the day before the wedding. I woke up early and did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church. Not the big Baptist church where I'd taken Marcus when he was growing up, where everyone knew us, where they'd asked questions about him. I went to a small AME church in a different neighborhood, where no one knew me. The pastor preached about the prodigal son, about forgiveness and reconciliation. But as I listened, I thought about a different interpretation. What about the parent who has to learn when to stop waiting? What about the mother who has to save herself? After church, I went shopping. I used money from my lockbox, money I'd saved for Marcus, and I bought myself a dress for the wedding. A beautiful dress from a boutique I'd walked past hundreds of times but never entered because it was too expensive. The saleswoman, a kind, middle-aged black woman named Patricia, helped me find the perfect outfit. A deep purple gown with elegant beading, sophisticated and age-appropriate. She styled it with a matching shawl and simple jewelry. "You look stunning," Patricia said, stepping back to admire me in the mirror. I looked at myself and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had I gotten so old? When had these wrinkles appeared around my eyes? These gray streaks in my hair? I'd spent so many years working that I'd forgotten to notice I was aging. "I'll take it," I said. The total made me wince, but I didn't change my mind. Monday morning dawned clear and cold. The wedding was at 2 p.m. I had the entire morning to prepare, which was good because it took me longer than expected to get ready. I did my own hair, putting it up in an elegant twist. I did my makeup carefully, watching YouTube tutorials on my phone to get the technique right. I dressed slowly, savoring each moment. When I finally looked at myself in the mirror, I saw someone I'd forgotten existed. Dorothy Jean Washington. Not Marcus's mother, not the nursing assistant, not the cleaning lady, just Dorothy, a woman who had worked hard her entire life and deserved to be seen. I called an Uber, another first for me. I'd learned how to use the app from a patient's daughter at the hospital. The driver, a young man named Jerome, complimented me when I got in the car. "You look very elegant, ma'am. Special occasion?" "My son's wedding." "Congratulations. You must be so proud." I didn't answer. I just looked out the window as we drove from the south side toward downtown, watching my neighborhood fade away. The Chicago Club was even more imposing in person, a massive stone building that took up an entire corner in the Loop. It screamed old money and exclusivity. A doorman in uniform stood at the entrance, eyeing arriving guests. I paid Jerome, tipped him generously, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, gathering my courage. "You got this, ma'am," Jerome said through his window before driving away. "You look like royalty." His kindness almost made me cry. I walked up the steps. The doorman looked at me with barely concealed surprise, but he opened the door. Inside, the club was as magnificent as I'd imagined. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of men in suits who probably never worked a day in their lives. A woman at a desk asked for my name. She checked a list, found it, and gave me a small, tight smile. "The ceremony is on the 3rd floor. The elevator is to your right." I rode the elevator up with 2 other couples, both white, both dressed impeccably. They looked at me with polite curiosity, but didn't speak. I was clearly not part of their world. The 3rd floor opened into a beautiful room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. White chairs were arranged in rows facing a small altar decorated with white roses and lilies. Maybe 30 people were already seated, talking quietly among themselves. I scanned the room looking for Marcus. I found him at the front, talking to a tall man with silver hair who must have been Jennifer's father. Marcus wore a tuxedo I'd never seen before, probably custom made. He looked handsome, successful, like he belonged in this room with these people. He hadn't seen me yet. I stood at the back of the room, taking it all in. The expensive flowers, the designer dresses, the confident conversations of people who'd never worried about paying rent or affording groceries. This was Marcus's new world, and it couldn't have been more different from the one we'd shared. A woman approached me. She was about my age, elegantly dressed in a champagne-colored gown, with pearls at her neck and diamonds on her fingers. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were assessing. "Hello, I'm Eleanor Palmer, Jennifer's mother." "You must be Marcus's mother, Dorothy Washington. How lovely to meet you. Marcus has told us so much about you." Another lie, but I let it pass. "Your dress is beautiful," she said, though her tone suggested surprise. She'd probably expected me to show up in something inappropriate. "Thank you. Please, sit anywhere. We're keeping things very intimate today." She gestured to the rows of chairs, all of which were already claimed by people who knew each other, who belonged to this world. There was one empty chair in the last row, off to the side, my assigned seat. I sat down and watched as more guests arrived, doctors in expensive suits, lawyers in designer dresses. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. They air-kissed and laughed and talked about their recent vacations in Italy or their children at Harvard. No one spoke to me. At exactly 2 p.m., a string quartet began to play. Everyone stood. Marcus took his place at the altar, and for the first time, he looked toward the seats. His eyes found me in the back row, and I saw recognition, followed by what looked like relief that I'd followed Jennifer's instructions and dressed appropriately. He didn't smile at me, didn't wave, just a small nod of acknowledgement before turning back to face the aisle. Jennifer appeared, walking down the aisle on her father's arm. She was beautiful, I had to admit, a vision in white lace, with a long veil and a bouquet of white roses. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. The ceremony was brief, as Jennifer had promised. A judge friend of her father's officiated. The vows were traditional, impersonal. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged rings, kissed, and it was over in less than 15 minutes. Everyone applauded. The couple walked back down the aisle together, smiling at their guests. As they passed my row, Jennifer looked right at me and smiled. Marcus didn't look at all. At the reception, held in an adjacent room, I stood alone near a window. while everyone else mingled. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I took a glass of champagne, but couldn't bring myself to drink it. I watched Marcus and Jennifer work the room, talking to each cluster of guests. They laughed and hugged and posed for photos. A professional photographer followed them around, capturing every moment. I waited for Marcus to come over to me, to introduce me to his new wife, to include me in a photo, to acknowledge my existence in some way. He didn't. 45 minutes into the reception, I set down my untouched champagne and walked toward the elevator. I was done. As I waited for the elevator, I heard a voice behind me. Mom. I turned. Marcus stood there, alone, looking uncomfortable. You're leaving already? We haven't even cut the cake. There's no cake, Marcus. Jennifer said this was just a brief cocktail reception. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Right. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Like I was a work colleague who'd stopped by an office party. You look nice, he added awkwardly. Thank you. The elevator arrived. The doors opened. I stepped inside and turned to face him. Marcus, do you even know why I came today? He looked confused. Because it's my wedding? No, baby. I came to say goodbye. Goodbye? What do you mean? I mean, I'm done. Done waiting for you to have time for me. Done making excuses for why you're too busy to call. Done pretending it doesn't hurt that you're ashamed of where you came from. Mom, I'm not ashamed. Yes, you are. You've been ashamed of me for years. The struggling single mother from the South Side doesn't fit the image you want to project. I get it. I understand. But I'm not going to wait around anymore for you to decide I'm good enough to be part of your life. That's not fair. I invited you today, didn't I? You sent me an invitation 3 days before your wedding and put me in the back row like I was a stranger. You've been with Jennifer for 2 years and never told me about her. You joined her family and left yours behind. The elevator doors started to close. I held them open. I want you to know something, Marcus. I don't regret the sacrifices I made for you. I don't regret the years of working 3 jobs so you could have opportunities I never had. I don't regret any of it. But I'm done sacrificing myself for someone who doesn't want me in his life. Mom, that's not true. I do want you in my life. Then act like it. But until you do, I'm going to live for myself. I've earned that right. I let the doors close. Through the narrowing gap, I saw Marcus's face, finally showing real emotion. Shock, hurt, maybe even understanding. But it was too late. The elevator descended, taking me away from that world of marble and champagne, away from my son who had outgrown me, away from a life where I was no longer welcome. When I stepped out onto Michigan Avenue, the afternoon sun was bright. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the cold air, feeling lighter than I had in years. I called another Uber. While I waited, I thought about what came next. The new apartment, the visit to Ruth in Atlanta, the retirement I'd finally earned. A life that was mine, not lived in service to someone else's dreams. The driver arrived, a cheerful woman named Marie, who asked how the wedding was. It was exactly what it needed to be. That's wonderful. I bet your son was so happy you were there. I hope so, but it doesn't matter anymore. She looked at me in the rearview mirror, confused, but I just smiled and looked out the window. As we drove back toward the South Side, I thought about the little boy who used to hold my hand, who used to say I was the best mama in the world, who used to promise he'd take care of me when he grew up. That little boy was gone. In his place was a man I barely knew, a man who had chosen a different life, a different family, a different version of himself that didn't include me. And that was okay. It had to be okay, because I couldn't spend the rest of my life waiting for him to remember I existed. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who saw me as an obligation, not a blessing. I was 58 years old. If I was lucky, I had 20 or 30 more years ahead of me, and I was going to live them for myself. That night, in my apartment, I changed out of my beautiful purple dress and into my comfortable pajamas. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I learned about Marcus's wedding. I felt peaceful, sad, but peaceful. I didn't know if Marcus would call, if he'd think about what I'd said, if it would change anything between us. But I knew something had changed in me, something fundamental. I had finally chosen myself. 3 days later, as I was packing boxes in preparation for my move, my phone rang. It was Marcus. "Hi, baby," I answered, my voice neutral. "Mom, we need to talk." "About what?" "About what you said at the wedding, about me being ashamed of you." "Marcus, I don't want to argue. What's done is done." "I'm not calling to argue. I'm calling because you were right." I sat down, surprised. "I have been ashamed," he continued, his voice heavy. "I have been ashamed. Not of you exactly, but of where I came from, of being poor, of having to work so hard just to get by. When I got into Northwestern, when I started meeting people from different backgrounds, I felt like I had to hide my past to fit in." I listened, saying nothing. Jennifer's family, they're everything we weren't. They have money, connections, history. When I started dating her, I wanted so badly to belong to that world that I tried to forget where I came from. I minimized you. I made you smaller in my story because I thought it would make me bigger in theirs. "And did it work?" I asked quietly. "No. I thought it would make me happy being accepted into their world. But yesterday, watching you walk away, I realized I traded something real for something hollow." "Marcus, I'm not asking you to choose between me and Jennifer's family. I'm just asking you to stop being ashamed of who you are and where you came from." "I know. And I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for making you feel like you weren't good enough, when the truth is you're the strongest, most amazing person I know." Tears ran down my face, but I kept my voice steady. "Thank you for saying that, baby. But an apology doesn't fix everything." "I know. I want to do better. I want to be better. Will you give me a chance?" I thought about it for a long moment. Could people really change? Could Marcus unlearn years of trying to distance himself from his past? "I'm moving to a smaller apartment," I told him. "I quit all my jobs. I'm going to visit your Aunt Ruth in Atlanta for a while. I'm building a new life, Marcus. One that doesn't revolve around waiting for you." "I understand. But can I be part of that new life? Not the center of it, but part of it?" "That depends on you. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be real. No more last-minute invitations, no more months without contact, no more treating me like an embarrassing secret." "I promise, Mom. I'll do better." "We'll see," I said, not coldly, but honest. Trust had to be earned, even between mothers and sons. We talked for another hour. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. Marcus told me about the pressure he'd felt trying to fit into the medical world, the isolation of being one of the few Black surgeons at Northwestern, the way Jennifer's family had initially looked down on him until he proved himself worthy. I listened and understood more than he knew. The weight of trying to belong somewhere you're not sure you fit. The pressure to be twice as good to be considered half as worthy. "But Mom," he said, "none of that is an excuse for how I treated you. You deserved better. You deserve better." "Yes," I agreed simply. "I do." After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, caution, a tiny spark of hope that I tried not to let grow too large. Marcus's apology had been genuine. I believed that. But I also knew that words were easy and change was hard. I'd spent 30 years watching him grow from a boy who promised me the world into a man who forgot I existed. One phone call couldn't undo all of that. The next few weeks were busy with the practicalities of my new life. I moved into a smaller one-bedroom apartment in Hyde Park, a neighborhood I'd always liked but never thought I could afford. Ironically, by cutting back to just my social security and a small pension, I could afford it now that I wasn't trying to maintain the larger place or save money for Marcus. The new apartment was on the third floor of a vintage building with hardwood floors and big windows that let in beautiful light. It was half the size of my old place, but it was all mine, decorated exactly how I wanted it, not arranged around the ghost of Marcus's childhood. I bought new furniture, not expensive things, but pieces I actually liked. A comfortable reading chair, a small dining table, artwork from a local Black artist's gallery. For the first time in my life, I made my space reflect who I was, not who I thought I should be. Marcus called twice during those weeks. Once to ask about the move, offering to help, but accepting when I told him I'd already hired movers. Once to invite me to dinner at his condo, an invitation I politely declined. "I'm not ready for that yet, baby. Let's take things slow." I could hear the hurt in his voice, but also acceptance. "Okay, Mom. Whatever you need." It was strange, this new dynamic between us. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus was having to work for my attention rather than the other way around. Jennifer called too, which surprised me. I almost didn't answer when I saw Jennifer Palmer Washington on my caller ID. "Mrs. Washington, I wanted to apologize for how we handled the wedding. Marcus told me what you said, and you were right. We should have included you more." Her apology sounded practiced, like she'd rehearsed it, but I appreciated the effort. "I also wanted to understand you better," she continued. "Marcus talks about you differently now. He told me about his childhood, about how hard you worked. I didn't know any of that before." "He didn't tell you?" "He told me his mother raised him alone and worked in healthcare, but he didn't tell me about the 3 jobs, the sacrifices, the everything. He kept it vague. I think he was embarrassed, though I wish he hadn't been." "Why do you wish that?" "Because I would have respected him more if I'd known. My family, we have money, but we don't have that kind of strength. My parents inherited everything they have. I went to Princeton because my grandfather went to Princeton. Marcus earned everything himself, and you made that possible. That's more impressive than anything my family has ever done." I was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "That's kind of you to say." "It's not kind. It's true. I'd like to get to know you if you're willing. Not because Marcus wants me to, but because I want to." "Why?" "Because I'm going to be married to your son for the rest of my life, hopefully. And I'd like to know where he comes from. The real story, not the sanitized version he was telling people." There was something genuine in her voice that I hadn't heard before. Maybe Jennifer wasn't the enemy I had imagined. Maybe she'd just been following Marcus's lead, accepting the story he told about his past. "We can have coffee sometime," I said carefully. "After I get back from Atlanta. I'm going to Atlanta to visit my sister for a couple of months. I've been promising her for years." "That sounds wonderful." "When you get back then, I'll look forward to it." After that call, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but a willingness to consider that things might be more complicated than I thought. Marcus had created this distance, but Jennifer was willing to bridge it. That was something. I left for Atlanta in early November, taking the train because I'd never liked flying and had time to spare. The 14-hour journey gave me space to think, to watch the country change outside my window as we traveled south. Ruth met me at the station in Atlanta, pulling up in her old Honda with a huge smile on her face. We hadn't seen each other in 3 years, and her grayer, more grown face was so nice to see. "Look at you," she said, holding me at arm's length. "You look different, lighter somehow." "I feel lighter." Ruth lived in a small house in East Point, a modest neighborhood south of Atlanta. Her husband, Leonard, had passed away 5 years ago, and her 2 kids were grown and living in different states. Like me, she was alone, but learning to be okay with it. That first night, sitting on her back porch with sweet tea and the sound of crickets, I told her everything. The wedding, the conversation with Marcus, the move, the decision to finally live for myself. Ruth listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, her face showing understanding. "You did the right thing," she said when I finished. "That boy needed to learn he couldn't just use you up and throw you away." I don't think he meant to use me up. I think he just forgot I was a person with my own needs. That's the same thing, Dorothy. Kids forget their parents are people because we teach them to forget. We sacrifice so much that they start thinking sacrifice is all we're for. Her words hit me hard because they were true. I had taught Marcus that my only purpose was to serve his needs. I'd never modeled having my own dreams, my own boundaries, my own life separate from being his mother. "Well, I'm teaching him something different now," I said. "Good. And what are you teaching yourself?" The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you spent 30 years living for Marcus. Now you're not living for him anymore. But are you living for yourself, or are you just existing?" I didn't have an answer. The next few weeks in Atlanta became an unexpected journey of discovery. Ruth was part of a community of women, all in their 50s and 60s, who met regularly for various activities: book club on Mondays, walking group on Wednesdays, church on Sundays, followed by lunch at different soul food restaurants. Ruth brought me to everything, introducing me as her sister from Chicago who was visiting indefinitely. The women welcomed me without question, absorbing me into their circle like I'd always been there. These women were revelations to me. There was Carolyn, 63, who divorced her husband of 30 years because he expected her to keep sacrificing herself for his comfort. There was Patricia, 59, who'd retired early from teaching and now ran a small catering business she'd always dreamed about. There was Gloria, 65, who'd lost her husband and 2 years later started dating again, something she said she'd never imagined doing. They were women who had decided life wasn't over just because they were older, just because their children were grown, just because society said they should be invisible now. "We call ourselves the Second Act Society," Patricia explained during one of our Monday book clubs, "because we're all in the second act of our lives and we're determined to make it better than the first." "What was wrong with the first act?" I asked. "Nothing was wrong with it. We did what we were supposed to do: raised families, worked jobs, took care of everyone. But the second act is for us." That phrase stuck with me. The second act is for us. I started thinking about what I wanted my second act to look like. Who was Dorothy Washington when she wasn't Marcus's mother, when she wasn't rushing between 3 jobs, when she could choose how to spend her days? I didn't know. I'd never given myself permission to think about it. One Wednesday, after our walking group finished a circuit around a local park, Carolyn invited me to her house. She had a small studio in her converted garage where she made pottery. "This is what I do now," she said, showing me shelves full of beautiful bowls, vases, and sculptures. I always wanted to try it, but I never had time when I was working and raising kids and being a wife. Now I have time. I picked up one of her bowls, admiring the glaze, the weight of it in my hands. "It's beautiful. You want to try?" "Try making pottery?" "Why not? I have extra clay. I can show you the basics." That afternoon, I sat at Carolyn's pottery wheel with my hands in wet clay, trying to shape a bowl under her patient guidance. It was harder than it looked. The clay kept collapsing or going off center, but there was something meditative about it, something healing about creating something with my own hands that wasn't for anyone else. By the end of the session, I had a lumpy, uneven bowl that Carolyn generously said had character. "That's your first piece," she said. "We'll fire it and glaze it, and you'll have it to keep." I looked at my misshapen bowl and felt absurdly proud. I had made something, just for me. That night, I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. "Hi, Mom. How's Atlanta?" "It's good. Really good." I'm learning to make pottery. Pottery? Really? Don't sound so surprised. I can learn new things. No, I didn't mean, that's great, Mom. I just never knew you were interested in pottery. Neither did I. Turns out there's a lot about me I didn't know. We talked for a while about nothing in particular. He told me about his cases at the hospital. I told him about Ruth's neighborhood. It was pleasant, superficial, careful. We were both being cautious, neither wanting to push too hard. Before we hung up, Markle said, "Mom, I miss you." "I miss you too, baby." And it was true. I did miss him. But I didn't miss the old dynamic, the old relationship where I waited constantly for crumbs of his attention. Christmas approached, and Marcus called to ask if I'd come back to Chicago for the holidays. Jennifer wanted to host dinner at their condo, include me properly this time. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm going to stay here with Ruth. We're going to volunteer at a community dinner for people who don't have family nearby. Oh, the disappointment in his voice was clear. Can we do something when you get back then? Maybe New Year's? Maybe. Let me see how I feel. It was the first Christmas I'd spent away from Marcus since he was born. The first Christmas where I chose something else over him. The community dinner was beautiful. Ruth and I spent the day cooking alongside other volunteers, preparing ham, collard greens, mac and cheese, sweet potato pie, all the traditional foods. We served nearly 200 people, families and individuals who came for the meal and the companionship. I sat with an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, who told me about her 3 children who lived in different states and rarely called. I listened to her stories and thought about how easily I could have become her, spending holidays alone, wondering why my sacrifices weren't enough to keep my child close. But I wasn't her. Because I'd chosen to leave before the loneliness consumed me. I'd chosen to build a new life rather than wait for my old one to improve. That night, Ruth and I sat in her living room with leftover pie and watched Christmas movies. "You seem happy," Ruth observed. "I am happy. Is that strange?" "It's not strange at all. It's about time." My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Merry Christmas, Mom. I love you. Hope you're having a good day." I texted back, "Merry Christmas, baby. Love you too." Short, simple, true. I stayed in Atlanta through January, extending my visit because I wasn't ready to go back yet. I kept attending the Second Act Society meetings. I took a pottery class at a local community center. I even joined Ruth's church choir, something I hadn't done since Marcus was little. One Sunday after church, the pastor, Reverend Matthews, asked if he could speak with me privately. "Sister Dorothy tells me you're thinking about staying in Atlanta permanently." "I'm considering it. I haven't decided." "We could use someone like you here, someone who understands what it means to start over." "What do you mean?" "We run a program for single mothers, young women trying to raise kids alone, working multiple jobs, struggling to get by. We provide childcare assistance, job training, financial counseling, but what we're missing is mentorship. Women like you who've walked that path and survived it. I don't know if I'd be good at that." I said honestly. "Why not?" "Because I failed. My son didn't even want me at his wedding. What kind of mentor would I be?" "Mr. Dorothy, you didn't fail. You raised a son who became a doctor. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give him opportunities. The fact that he lost his way for a while doesn't diminish what you accomplished. He didn't lose his way. He just outgrew me. Did he? Or did he just forget where he came from? That's on him, not you. And now he's trying to find his way back. That's growth." I sat with his words for a long time. That night, I made a decision. I called a real estate agent in Chicago and listed my Hyde Park apartment. Then I called another agent in Atlanta and started looking for a small place to rent. I was moving to Atlanta permanently. When I told Marcus, he was quiet for a long time. "Atlanta? But, Mom, what about us, baby?" I want to rebuild our relationship. How can we do that if you're in a different state? The same way we've been doing it for the last few months. Phone calls, video chats, visits when it makes sense. Marcus, I lived in Chicago my whole life, waiting for you. Now I'm going to live in Atlanta for myself. This feels like punishment. It's not punishment. It's me choosing my own happiness. If you want to be part of that, you're welcome. But you're not the center of it anymore. Another long silence. Okay? He finally said. I understand. Can I come visit sometime? Meet Aunt Ruth. See where you're living. Of course. When I get settled, we'll plan something. By February, I was moved into a small apartment in East Point, a 10-minute walk from Ruth's house. It had one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a back porch where I could sit and watch birds. It was perfect. I started volunteering with Reverend Matthew's program for single mothers. 2 afternoons a week, I met with young women who reminded me so much of my younger self, exhausted, determined, doing their best with limited resources. I didn't pretend to have all the answers. I just told them my story, shared what I'd learned, listened to their struggles. One young woman, Shanice, 28, with a 5-year-old son, broke down crying during our third meeting. I'm so tired, she said. I work all day and I come home and I still have to cook and clean and help with homework. When does it get easier? It doesn't get easier, I told her honestly, but you get stronger and your son will remember everything you're doing for him. Will he, or will he just expect it? The question hit me hard. Teach him to appreciate it now. Don't make the mistake I made of never asking for recognition. Let him know that what you're doing is extraordinary, not ordinary. I wished someone had told me that 30 years ago. Marcus did come to visit in March, bringing Jennifer with him. We stayed at a hotel and had dinner at Ruth's house. It was the first time I'd seen him in 5 months. He looked good, relaxed somehow, less tense than I remembered. Jennifer brought flowers and a genuine smile. Thank you for having us, Mrs. Washington. Call me Dorothy, please. Dinner was pleasant. Marcus and Leonard, Ruth's late husband's best friend who joined us, talked about basketball. Jennifer and Ruth compared notes on Atlanta restaurants. I mostly listened, observing this new version of my son who was trying so hard to be respectful, to be present. After dinner, Marcus asked if we could take a walk, just the two of us. We walked through Ruth's neighborhood in the warm evening air, past small houses with front porches, kids playing basketball in driveways, the ordinary beauty of a community. I like it here, Marcus said. I can see why you stayed. It's home now. Mom, I need to tell you something. I braced myself, not sure what was coming. We've been in therapy, couples therapy, but also I've been going individually, working through some things. What kind of things? Shame, identity, the way I treated you. My therapist says I have what she calls internalized classism. I was so ashamed of being poor that I tried to erase that part of my past, including you. And now? Now I'm trying to accept all of who I am. The kid from the South Side who wore secondhand clothes and qualified for free lunch. The man who worked his way through medical school. Both parts are me. I can't have one without the other. We walked in silence for a while. Mom, I know I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I want you to know I'm working on being different, being better. I can see that, baby. I'm proud of you for doing that work. Are we going to be okay? You and me? I stopped walking and looked at him. My son, the little boy I raised, the man he'd become, the person he was still becoming. Yes, I said, we're going to be okay. but it's going to be different. I'm not going back to the way things were. I don't want you to. The way things were wasn't good for you." That acknowledgement meant more than any apology. We hugged there on the sidewalk, holding each other tight. I felt him crying. This grown man who performed heart surgeries but was still my baby in so many ways. "I love you, Mama. I love you too." Today, 2 years later, I wake up in my Atlanta apartment to the sound of birds outside my window. I make coffee in my small kitchen and sit on my back porch, watching the morning light paint everything gold. I'm 60 years old now. I volunteer 3 days a week with the Single Mothers Program. I take pottery classes on Thursdays. I'm part of Ruth's choir at church. I have friends who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. Marcus calls every Sunday. Sometimes we talk for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. He and Jennifer come to visit every few months. I went to Chicago for Thanksgiving last year. We're building something new, something healthier than what we had before. He understands now that I'm not waiting by the phone for his calls, that I have my own life, my own commitments, my own happiness. And strangely, that understanding has made him more attentive, not less. He values our relationship now because he knows it requires effort on his part. Last month, Marcus called with news. Jennifer is pregnant. I'm going to be a grandmother. We want you to be really involved. Not like I was with you. We want our child to know their grandmother, to spend time with you, to understand where they come from. I'd like that, but on my terms. I'm not moving back to Chicago to be a full-time babysitter. We wouldn't ask you to, but maybe you could visit sometimes and we can bring the baby to Atlanta regularly. That sounds perfect. I'm excited about becoming a grandmother, but I'm not going to make the same mistakes I made as a mother. I'm not going to sacrifice everything for this child. I'm going to love them, spend time with them, be a presence in their life. But I'm also going to maintain my own life, my own identity, my own boundaries. The women in the Second Act Society threw me a grandmother-to-be party last week. We ate cake and laughed, and they gave me advice about grandparenting. The best thing about being a grandmother is that you can love them completely without losing yourself. You've already raised your kids. This time is for enjoying, not sacrificing. I think about the Dorothy who received that wedding invitation 2 years ago, the woman who was broken by her son's rejection, the woman who thought her only value was in what she could give to others. She's gone now. In her place is someone stronger, someone who knows her worth, someone who chose herself and discovered that the world didn't end when she did. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. Not of the person, but of the expectation that they'll complete you, validate you, give your life meaning. I had to lose Marcus to find myself. And in finding myself, I discovered that I could love him better, healthier, without needing him to fill all the empty spaces in my life. My phone buzzes. A text from Shanice, one of the young mothers I mentor. "Dorothy, I got the job, full-time with benefits. Thank you for believing in me." I smile and text back congratulations, feeling genuine joy at her success. This is my second act. Not perfect, not without loneliness or hard moments, but mine. Authentically, completely mine. And it turns out, that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.